Hello, hello. Sorry about that. I had to get my microphone plugged back in again because I unplugged it to get something done. And I'm now going to make lots of noise in your ear while I move it. Please excuse me. We've got something underway for an alternative to a shock mount for my lovely little blue snowball microphone. I like it because it's got fabulous pickup. But I get frustrated with it at times because it has fabulous pickup, which means that anyone who's downstairs talking in the kitchen gets to be part of our stream, I suppose, is the best way to explain it. Sorry, now getting a little bit warm, just going to take the cardigan off. It happens almost every time, doesn't it? Yeah, we're having some not so nice weather here at the moment, here in this part of New Zealand. Sitting on the bottom end of my cardigan. I finally also remembered to change the background picture. That's a lovely one by, I think it was Helen Ellingham, who was a lady who did paintings during the Victorian period. And actually, a lot of the places, even though it wasn't where she had grown up, a lot of the places she painted were around the area that we lived in England. So they feel familiar. The texturing on the walls here are what they call hung tiles. So tiles, roofing style tiles, but made for walls, are actually hung along the wall frames to create the weatherproofing for the house, just the way it was built. So that's one of those lovely little things. And she had some fame in lots of different ways. I was just finding out a little bit extra about her because I did know about the houses. I remember seeing some of her prints of some of her pictures. They used to be often used as calendar pictures. And then when we were moving from the community house that we had worked at to help out, I was working in the kitchen, my husband was working as builder and painter and all sorts of things like that. Where we were moving to, which was on a farm down in southern Surrey, we were driving past houses exactly like this. In fact, there were a couple of the ones that we drove past, I'm certain that she painted. But one of the things that amused me that I found out about was that Vincent van Gogh, Vincent van Gogh, whichever way you want to say it, when he was developing as an artist, greatly admired her work because he was studying a lot of English illustrated journals at the time. And what he probably didn't know was that it was actually a woman's work because she was releasing artwork under the name of H. Patterson because that was her maiden name, and it didn't put a lot of extra detail into it. And at the time, women artists were not recognised as being worthy of any honour in any sort of way, particularly. So it's just one of those things, sadly. So we've got a little bit of extra background behind us at the moment, and I chose it just because it kind of goes in with the Victorian farmyard feel, which we've got going on in the current story that we've got. It's basically set around the adventures these two children have, and their youngest brother, I think it is, around a Victorian farmyard that is and house that has been built in like one of our previous stories, and amongst the ruins of what had been basically a manor house. So that kind of gives it a little bit of context. I like to, where I can, to choose something that is relevant in some way. And sorry, because of the tweaking I did on my green screen the other day, it's doing weird things with my hair. I mean, my hair is weird enough as it is, but it's just making it look a little bit extra odd. Anyway, so I've got a couple of pictures in the background that I can use as sources for jigsaw puzzles if anyone is wanting to do jigsaw puzzles today. I'm still looking over on the other page just so I can have a quick look at some extra bits of information. That's all. And I'll be there with you again soon. Now, I don't know if you saw my Instagram post about today. No wonderful picture of something that's growing in the garden or anything like that. Just because I didn't actually manage to get that side of it done because I was rather busy doing some other things. pseudo coding, not proper coding, but actually just referring to some information from somewhere else that was created for us on our stream. And I'll explain in just a moment. I just need to get these in the right place over here. And I need to look for, there was one piece of information I was hoping for, which I wasn't able to find. That's okay. I can leave that one alone for now. No, can't find that. Right. So there's various things going on that I've been working on behind the scenes. And I don't know if you realize that. There are things that I've been working on. Some of you do, because I have actually asked some questions and asked for a little bit of help on some things and had a bit of help on some things. So one of the things I did recently was I was saying it would be really, really cool if we could actually have a command where I can type in a word into the chat without having to spend lots and lots of time looking it up on my browser. And then a dictionary definition would pop up for us. And Q, I think it was, Coleslaw, found one for us and was apologetic about it because the only dictionary resources is the Urban Dictionary, which is not G or PG rated, really. It's basically a user contributed dictionary, and a lot of the background to it is people wanting to get definitions up there for things that normally aren't allowed in the dictionary, or for very modern usages and things like that. So there were two drawbacks for me on that. One is because it's probably got some stuff that's really not suitable content for our community here. And then secondly, it's probably drawing from a dictionary source. The Urban Dictionary is probably a dictionary source that doesn't have the sort of words that we need for what we're doing here. The reason I'm looking up a word is because it's a word that I'm not familiar with, or I'm wanting a clearer definition than what I've got in my head. And usually the only reason I'm referencing a definition is because it's a word, an older word that's come out of one of our old books. And so therefore I was thinking, like, it would be really cool if we could do this. Now I've got it set up. Someone wrote the code for me to use as an alert, as a widget apparently, for the system that I use for when I'm doing my streaming. And I asked a question and just said, does anybody know if there's anything around? And there's a few of them looked into it, and one of them came back and said there isn't, but it would require, the information it would require would be to pull this sort of information and that sort of information and some other information and format it like this to be able to be available. And I'll have a look at it shortly. And I'm like, wow, cool. But because most of the information was about what sort of technical stuff rather than the little bit I'll have a look shortly, I was like, I don't think I can cope with that. I think that's way beyond my capacity to learn new things. I mean, I like new things, but putting it into practice, I need to have plenty of time to actually really seriously learn something before I can start putting it into practice. And coding is not one of my ambitions at the moment. I've got enough going on as it is. I've just finished taking a batch of photos, and I've got to crop and edit them and stuff like that for our products. I've got another batch waiting ready for me to take. When am I going to learn how to do coding for a widget? And I was thinking, nothing's going to happen. Very nice that they explained it, but I'm going to have to learn how to do it for myself. I left it over the weekend. I got a message. I was tagged in the Discord server to say, not our one, their one, to say that give this a try. Here are the files you need. They didn't tell me how to put it together, but here are the files you will need. Give this a try. There are these these areas that will possibly need consideration in the future, but don't worry about it for now. Test it out. And so I had a bit of a fiddle around with it and did a bit more fiddling around with it, and then did some more fiddling around with it and managed to get it so it works in our chat. I'm going to see if I can get it to work for you now. So here we go. No. So at the moment, it's only for me and any mods. I will try to get it so it's actually available later on. See if that works. There you go. See? Right there. Whoop, there. The box isn't the right side. Book, a collection of sheets of paper. Now I'm going to have to resize that because otherwise it's not going to work if it's a longer definition. So I typed into my chat exclamation dict for dictionary. They came up with the shortcut for it, and that's what it came up with. So I'm just stoked. It's like, wow, it worked, and somebody sorted that out for me and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, like I say, I'm rather stoked. I didn't realize somebody was actually going to be able to come up with something that was that effective that quickly. Obviously they know what they're doing. They're good at coding, really. So I'll just see if I can get this here to be bigger, and then we'll see what we can do. I will give it one more try, just for the fun of it. Yay, it worked with all the words. I have yet to come up with a way of getting it to actually have a background to that part of it. A collection of sheets of, and it will be there for a certain amount of time and then it will fade out. Collection of sheets of paper bound together to hinge at one edge containing blah, blah, blah. So it works. Yay! And I had to do some adjustments myself for how big the words looked so that they were solid enough to be able to read them on screen. And I mean, I know they're quite small for when you're watching a screen like this. Definitely too small on a small screen like a phone or something like that. But hey, that was really cool. What did you think? Anyway, so much thanks goes out to our coder, and I don't quite know how to say their name. It's AVOEH. Avo? I'm not quite sure, but it's one of the wonderful coders over on the Stream Elements Discord. So if you're ever over there, say thank you to them for us, for our community. I'm going to write their name. And I'm just putting this out there because I really want them to be appreciated for what they've done. So that was absolutely wonderful to have such a strong positive response about it. So cool, so cool. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you, Jonathan, for letting me know that it was sub only. Well done. It should be all go now for being able to type in. So I am sorry, yes, still getting too hot. I am, as you can tell, quite excited about that. So what else have we got? I've got two other new things going on. One of them has two parts to it. So I should probably introduce myself to anyone who's new here. Hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books, such as this one here. Yeah, which is all sort of like going transparent because my green screen settings. This book was given to my grandmother's brother 125 years ago. And yes, it's still a book that's in use. I grew up with those sort of books, and because they were normal for me, they were the books that I read. And I read lots and lots of books that were that sort of age when I was growing up, as well as newer ones like The Wind in the Willows and Winnie the Pooh and all that sort of stuff. And it meant that I had an understanding of the world, how things have changed over time, other ways that people do things in different places and in different times that a lot of the children I was growing up around didn't. And I did actually realize that that was part of the difference. And I also realized that a lot of old books are no longer available to the general public unless they know to go and look at somewhere like Project Gutenberg, which I shall give you the link for when I get my cursor in the right place. Project Gutenberg. Places like Project Gutenberg that host public domain books, and I felt that it was a good idea to actually share these sort of things with other people, especially children's books. There are other readers who read books that are not specifically children's books, that are public domain books. There is a wonderful group of us who do that, and we are the Codex readers. And if you go to my, if you look below my video window when I'm live, otherwise on my About page, you'll see a white circle button with the Codex logo, which is like the one that's over here when I'm live. And that takes you to our Codex Twitch team, and you will see if there's any of the Codex readers are currently live. You'll be able to go and visit them and join in with their stream and things like that. Give them a follow. They're a great bunch of people. We read all sorts of different things, public domain, or ones that we have express permission to be able to read, either from the author or from the publisher. So one of the readers is also an author. They often read their own works. We have a range of background skills and day jobs. So there are people who are librarians, teachers, audiobook readers, actors, all sorts. Some people who are travellers. And when you read, you bring part of who you are to what you're reading, whether it's in the way you read it, or whether it's like me, where you just keep interrupting all the time and explaining about things. So it's a great way to actually get this extra depth to what your hearing is actually when you're watching someone or listening to someone who is reading live, or it's not been done just as an audiobook. I love audiobooks. I often borrow them from the library, especially when I'm really tired, but I need something to distract my mind. When I'm not able to sit down and read a serious book, just sit down and concentrate on it, then an audiobook is a much easier way to do it. Plus also it's a great way to give your mind something to do when your hands are busy. So that's one of the reasons why I'm very happy to have people who are here when they're actually, sorry, getting my hair out of the way, it's bothering me again, when they're actually at work, and I'm just giving them something else to think about instead of just the same old that work can often have. Anyway, so there's a lot of books they're being lost from the public bookshelves just because there's not enough room on the bookshelf space on the bookshelves for books that are old, unless they are classics. Jane Austen, Shakespeare, those guys stay up there, but some of the other ones, no. Most people haven't heard of Angela Brazel. She's our current author. There's a lot of people who have heard of one or two books by Edith Nesbit, The Railway Children. There's another one that's a particularly well-known one, but other than that, no, they're not likely to be able to find them at the local library, because the local library can really only afford to have books on the shelves that are very popular, or such as classics, or really current, and people are asking for them. They're coming in because they're the ones that are currently people really wanting to read. So they have to get rid of older books. And unless you are someone who goes around the op shops or the second-hand shops or the charity shops or the whatever else they're called in your part of the world, shops, you're not going to find a lot of the older books. So public domain is the way to go with digital editions of some sort or another. There are some which are available through Amazon as free books because they are public domain books and they haven't had a lot of extra formatting, but you won't find a lot of information about the content of the book. Just about, when you're looking at the descriptions, what you will get on Amazon is just about when it was digitized and maybe who it was digitized by and what the format was. So you'll need to do a little bit more research yourself to find out some more about it, which is where the internet is your friend. Anyway, so for me, it's important to keep these older books in people's awareness, and for a lot of reasons. Some of it's just plain fun. You discover characters, you discover stories, you discover places that you'd never thought of, and words. Like one of the words that I keep coming back to just because it amuses me is mangelwurzel. It means a Swede or a field turnip type of vegetable that was used as an animal feed. But it's a word that's it's a phrase that's always sounded amusing to me, just because it does. It's not really a sort of name of something that you would hear these days, but it was a traditional old-fashioned name for a swede or like I say, a field turnip used as an animal feed. And it's the reason I particularly picked up on it when I was a kid was because a mangle or mangold is another name for them. Then that part of the name was no, not that part of the name. That part of the name I already knew. There was a TV character called Wurzel Gummidge, and the Wurzel part I think had come from this mangle wurzel vegetable. Supposedly he was a scarecrow who had come to life. It was one of those quirky British TV series. One of the things I grew up with. Anyway, so carrying on with who I am and what I'm doing, I do have 3 tips if you're new here. So the first tip is drinks, the second tip is snacks, and the third tip is comfortable. So, and by the way of drinks, make sure you always have water when you come to listen to a book with me. Your brain needs it and your body needs it. Both of them need water to keep functioning. You won't see me sipping from that particular water bottle just because it's too easy to tip over. I love it very much, especially the colour, but I don't like knocking water over when I'm near electronics, so this is what you'll see me actually sipping on. Speaking of which, snacks. Always good to have something to snack on when you're listening to or reading a good book, or even a not so good book. So today we have the noisy crackers. So I've got them out there. I won't actually unpack them just yet because otherwise they'll go soft. By way of drinks, I've also got coffee. What's your favourite drink? Type it in the chat. And comfort. I have, for comfort as my reminder, is a lovely dark purple cushion which has texture to it. So that's one of the ones that always helps me to remember that you need to just sort of keep yourself comfortable. Why not? I do have a bonus tip for you as well when I find the right thing. Make sure you've got a pencil and paper to put notes on, because often we come up with old words or old things or things that we want to look up. Not necessarily old things, but things to look up. And if you're anything like me, you forget by the time that you're actually ready to go and do something about it. It's just, what was it? I can't remember what it was. And it's too late. You've lost it. You've lost the thought. So if you've got a pencil and paper or a pen and paper or a stick and mud, whatever it is you need, but some way of taking notes just in case you want to. So that would be great. Yes, my hair is still annoying me. I should probably just tie it back. I think that would probably work a little bit better. Here we go. Hair tie. Normally I try to leave it a little bit fluffy, but just at the moment I haven't been at my best of health for the last week. I had Monday last week off just because of that, and so it's just taken a little bit more out of me than I'm used to. And yes, we're still getting too warm, so it's time to take the slippers off. Still got warm socks on in case we need them. Take them off if we have to. Anyway, right, so how are we going? Anyone ready for a jigsaw puzzle yet? Ah, dear. I am just going to do a little bit of computer housework here. Right. So when I say computer housework, I'm talking about the fact that what I am just in the middle of doing at the moment is checking who is currently on my channel, and if they are inappropriate, like they are a bot, I'm banning them. So to ban someone who is a bot, someone being an entity that's a bot, if you are the broadcaster, you type / and then ban, B-A-N. This is assuming you're using something like OBS. If you're not, there will be something similar, but try this anyway. / ban, B-A-N, then a space, and then you have copied their name from your community list over on your browser. you do have one eye on what's going on over there, don't you? So the community list is in your chat section on your browser. There, if you're watching on Twitch, up at the top of the chat section, there's a bar that says chat or something like that, stream chat. And then there's what looks like the heads of two peg dolls over in the right-hand corner. It's actually a button which is tagged as users in chat. And if you click on it, it will show you who they are. Now, even in OBS, it will show you that. I usually keep an eye on it over in my other browser window, but it's actually available. And then if you click on it again, you go back to chat. So then what you do is you copy that name and you go and check to see if they are a bot. If you know they're a bot, then ban them straight away. One of the ways of checking to see if they're a bot is you go over to twitchinsights.net and then /bots, type the name in there, paste the name in there, and if they are in more than a dozen channels, they're a bot, because there is no benefit to any individual streamer to actually allow to be able to be in more than about, I think, I'm not sure if it's 3 or 6 now, but Twitch recognizes you as having bot activity and doesn't give you watch time if doesn't give that person watch time if it's in more than 3 channels or 6 channels. It keeps changing. So my rule of thumb is if it's more than 2 digits, then ban them, because they're definitely a bot, because they are not doing anything productive. There are several reasons. And by the way, the Twitch Insights is only a starting point. If you want to learn more about how to protect your community, please join the Discord server and then go to GoRiki's security channel within the Discord server, the Codex Discord server. The Codex Discord server is available for anyone to join. You don't have to be a reader. I'm going to give you the link for it. So Codex, the chat has just given you the information about it. So it's got the link for the team page, but it's also got the link for the Discord server. Join it, even if you're not really into other reading apart from what I do here. You can get involved anyway. We do a book club that's coming up at the end of the month, all sorts of things like this. But there is a channel up near the top of the list called Security. And Goriki, who's one of our community, has taken the time to explain about how you can check up on your community, how you can make sure that things are not going inappropriately in chat, things like that, and why. So it's not just about looking at that website that I just explained. That's just a shortcut while you're actually streaming. Learn to recognize the indications of when something or someone is a bot. There are things like recognizing that there are certain streamers, supposed streamers, that they will commonly re-stream, be hosting them. As soon as these days, as soon as I see someone is hosting one of certain pages, certain other channels, they're automatically banned from my channel, just because the channel that they're hosting is only there as a 24/7 stream, just to get people through, just to get eyes on the screen so that others can harvest your information. It's not a good thing. Twitch does actually hold you as a streamer accountable for the health of your community. So if you are consistently allowing certain things through, you are putting at jeopardy what you want to do here on Twitch. It's a good idea to keep an eye on these things. I really need to condense what I say about this, don't I? Because it's usually way too long. Anyway, so there's a whole lot of stuff there. Go and have a look at the information on the Discord server, the Codex Discord server. And yeah, have a look, go and find out, learn from it, put things into practice. This is if you are a streamer. Now, if you're not a streamer, if you're just part of the community, if you like listening to stories and you're getting a little bit ho-hum about the fact that I explain this every now and then, just keep in mind that the reason I explain all these things is because I want people to look after one another, be careful of the well-being of one another, not actually allow others to steal our information. And for me, if I am an audience rather than a provider in certain places, and I know that the provider is doing certain things to make sure it's a safe place, I feel a lot happier to be there. So I don't mind if they take some time to explain things. I don't mind that they actually explain when I go on a plane where the fire exits are and how to use a life jacket. Those of us who have travelled quite a bit, it's like, oh, here we go again. But the reality is, there's a lot of people on that plane who have not done this often enough to know where to look for the life jacket, what to do, who to put the mask on first if the oxygen masks drop down. Do you put it on the child who is helpless, or do you put it on yourself? Most people's natural inclination is to put it on the child who's helpless, who can't do it for themselves. If you go unconscious because you run out of oxygen, you won't be able to help the child who's helpless or yourself. If you put it on yourself, you can then help the child. Things like that. I want to know that the people I am flying with are aware of things to do to keep us safe and what I can do to keep us safe. And so the same goes for streaming and all sorts of other things like that. It's all part of building a good, healthy community. Those of you who are new here, I do have some fairly strict safety boundaries set in place to do with words that can't be used and things like that. It's not worth trying to get around them, because you'll just get an actual active ban against you rather than being timed out or having your words cancelled. Because I want this to be a place that's safe for people who otherwise are a little bit scared of the internet. And there's a lot of older ones, my age and younger, some of them, who actually think that places like Twitch are only for gamer boys who are the naughty, nasty type. And I want to prove to them that there's a lot more of the internet is actually available. And if you learn how to look after yourself and those who are with you, like if it's grandparents with their grandkids wanting some stories, then you don't have to be sitting scared in the corner and never ever going out and doing anything interesting effectively on the internet. So let's create a good, safe place for them. We don't lose out by it, and it means that they can be part of it. So that's the end of the introduction. Yep, that's the end of the introduction. So anyone who wants some good news, apart from the fact that I now have this dictionary chat thing available, let me know. Actually, I'll have a quick look and see if I can bring that up as a change I can make to it for it to be available within chat. I'll see. Hang on. Dictionary. Here it is. I'm letting you get your wits together and see if you want to if you want me to tell you this extra information. There you go. My my dictionary tool should now be available for anyone in chat, and we'll be able to pass that information on to the person who wrote it for me. I'm just so excited that it's working. So, in addition to that, no, I do not yet have a post office box available. That will come one day. But, what I do have available is a Throne gifting account. Now, on my Throne page, one of the things I have listed is a post office box. So, and it's a community goal, so it means that, and I haven't yet got a slider for it, a progress bar for it or anything yet, but I will eventually do that. It's something where a community goal with Throne is one where a number of people can contribute until the threshold is met. A little bit like GoFundMe and Kickstarter and that sort of thing, but it's towards a specific purchase goal. And so for me, I thought that would be a good way to do it, would be to actually aim for getting a post office box. And then if anyone does want to send me books or anything like that, they can do so, or anything else that's appropriate. Now, the other aspect of Throne is that, now in New Zealand, it is not a country where you can order something online for somebody and it will be shipped to them, because we live so far away from everywhere else. I've talked to you about Amazon and places like that for why I don't have a Prime subscription. I don't get expedited shipping in New Zealand just because we're too far away. And there are enough subscription services for viewing things like TV programs and things like that, that Amazon Prime in that respect has no benefit for me. But because shipping is a handful for places like New Zealand, because the retailers that are available in places like the States and in Europe are not necessarily ones available in New Zealand, Throne's traditional gifting system isn't used in New Zealand. Because there are too many issues with if you have to get something returned and that sort of stuff, the distances and the time zones and everything just makes it too complicated. So what Throne have done is, instead of actually not allowing us to be part of it, which they used to do, they've opened it up, and I happened to be online at exactly the right time. They made some codes available, which means that you don't have to go into a waiting list, which is anywhere from 2 weeks to a couple of months, I've heard, to actually be able to join up and use the service. I was actually given a code and approved immediately, and then verified within 10 minutes once I started actually filling in the information. So what they have, the system for New Zealand and a lot of other places now, is that I can create a wish list of things that I would like, and specifically because I'm in New Zealand, I have chosen things where the supplier is within New Zealand. Later on, if it's a worthwhile service, I may extend it to some things through Amazon where I'm dealing with them directly. It's a lot faster than actually doing it through someone like Throne, the way they do it overseas. But what they do is, for New Zealand, is you create a wish list, people buy the thing for you, that money is put into your account and you order it, and then your chat, your community is notified that has happened, that it's been ordered, and then we can share it on stream, as opposed to just randomly having stuff turning up, which is the way it works overseas. But you do get notified that a gift has been bought for you. The reason why I think it's really cool is because it means that you don't have to know my address. You don't have to know my IRL name. You don't have to know how to find me, which is a little bit of a dodgy thing this day and age. This is that one, Throne, Throne. It's now actually available, but it's what they call a payout system for places like New Zealand, and I can give you extra information. Sorry, Shadow was just asking me a question. I'm just going to repost what you said, Shadow, because I've got 150 character limit, just because it's a way of preventing bot posts, because most bots actually post over 150 characters, and I'll just give you the information about bot posting. And it also means that when you've got a really busy chat, you've got a lot of stuff that comes through very fast, and if someone has a really big line of text, nobody else actually gets to see what else is being discussed. So yeah, the 150 is a really nifty workaround for some of the bot spammers. That's another one I learned from Go Reiki. So Throne, I have 2 more codes left that I can share with people who are streamers who would be interested in it. But like I say, it's a payout system. You create your wish list, and if you look at the down there, there is a visual of my link. And if you go and have a look, you'll see I've just got basically a placeholder set of things that I've wished for. I will get a lot more specific at some stage. And it means that if you do want to just give me a gift at some stage, then you can do it with that. And you can leave a note with the gift when you actually pay for it. And it's something that just works through, you pay for it as an online transaction. So I think, is it going to work? That didn't show up. It's meant to have showed up, I thought. Yeah, if you've got friends who are elsewhere, I know they've been doing this particular form for a few months now in New Zealand, but I only just specifically found out about it. But if you've got friends who are in a country that Throne actually works in, then it's a really handy way of being able to get stuff. I have actually been in discussion with Mighty Ape to find out if they're going to do their own version for here in New Zealand, where you can have your wish list like you do with Amazon or Mighty Ape for yourself, but your personal details are kept anonymous, and so you are still safe as a streamer, but also your people who are gifting to you, none of their details are revealed to you either. And the Mighty Ape one would be a really cool one because they do food stuff as well. So it's like having Treat Me or whatever it's called, where in the States you can get food sent to somebody for the fun of it, which would be cool too. I'm just trying to find, I had it. I'm sure there's another. I had another shortcut for that. No, I didn't add it. That's why it didn't work. Let's have another go at that. So I have actually been discussing that with Mighty Ape. I'm surprised that they hadn't heard of it before, but they've passed it on to their tech people, because it should be as a more modern usage of online purchasing. Because we have things like wish lists, they should just add in another variation on a wish list system, which is bundled with extra security protocols like not revealing anything but the screen name that you choose, not revealing addresses, and it happens reciprocally for the gifter and the giftee. So they're going to have a look at that, which is really cool. No promises, obviously. There, yay! That time it worked. I just forgot to save it when I actually added my shortcuts for it. So Throne or wish list or Throne_gifting, which is the really long version of it. I don't know why, but that's what they call it. No, they call it Throne wish list, not Throne gifting. So that's the one if you want to find out about it. I mean, that's to my wish list, but it will actually give you some extra information if you poke around or look them up. Anyway, so I thought that was really cool that I was able to get that and get it verified on the day that I applied. Yeah, Mighty Ape for treats would be absolutely wonderful. For those who are watching from overseas, one of the downsides of being in New Zealand and us being so far from everywhere is you can't just as easily send out for like what used to be called mail order supplies. Like in the States, you can order food supplies off Amazon, like snacks and stuff like that, and have them the next day. It's like, huh? How can you do that? We don't have that, but there is a retail distribution kind of website that is specifically an online business, and they do tech stuff, they do home goods, but they're not a department store. It was originally kind of a semi-clearance place, but they do some food things as well, like snacks, and they do some imported stuff in the way of foods. So sorry, I should have told you, this is my other big cool thing. It's actually not as big as the box. This is like other people get Amazon boxes. We get Mighty Ape boxes, and they're really cool with the way they brand their stuff. And they've got like books and electronics and all sorts of things like this. I like their way of doing things. And one of the things I like with their wish lists is you can create a wish list, and their normal wish list, because they haven't got this other system yet, you can create a wish list with Mighty Ape, and they will email you when products on your wish list are on special, so you don't have to buy them when they're full price. So I got myself, this is before I got Throne membership, I got myself a couple of things because they were discounted on my Mighty Ape wish list. And I don't know if anyone else knows, I know my family do. I like cool lighting, and I've got plans in mind for what I'm going to do for my reading setup rather than just using a green screen. So one of the things I did was this cool lunar light. Now it's a 3D printed lunar globe on a little stand, and I will show it to you. And it was a lot cheaper than normal too. Just because every now and then when they do a special, it's a doozy. Yes, I will get to reading sometime today. So this is what it looks like. It's 3D printed. It's got a battery inside. The charge is there for it. And then it's got these bits here which fit together. Hang on, I'll put this here somewhere where it's not going to roll off so I don't smash it. And the other thing that's really cool with this one is it's warm light and cool light. You can choose which it is. So these are the pieces for the base. So I'll just put them together. Smashing the table as much. Oh, no, I'm not going to worry about that. I'll get that one done properly by the guys in the workshop later on today. Guys in the workshop being my family. Hi, Colour Spinner. Thanks for being here. So this is the actual moon globe. So here you go. It's a bit hard to see. Turn this one off. So this is it. So yes, it's got an odd match up there, but if you look at it in the right sort of lighting, you can actually, it's meant to be based on really the way you see the craters and stuff of the moon. There's an, over here, there's an impact crater over here that we often see, which looks familiar, things like that. But also, so you've got that colour, and then you've also got that lighting, which I prefer. So when I get my stream space set up properly, this will be sitting in the background somewhere, just as part of the setting, like that. Wonderful, Colour Spinner. Great to have you here. Really is. I'm just going to get, oops, I need to turn that off again. And you just touch the actual charge point on it, which is that little circle socket that you saw before. So the other thing I picked up, I saw these a while ago, and yeah, it's what's really funny about the texture on that moon globe is that when you look at it just as a surface in your hand, because it's 3D printed, it's got parts of it that are thicker than other parts. The bits that we see in real life as the craters actually stick out more. It's the opposite to what you'd think normally when you're thinking of the moon. But that's because it makes them thicker so that they are more shadowed from the light that comes in from inside. So this is the other thing. The first time I saw one of these, I wanted one. And then I looked them up, and the price on them is horrendous. And then I discovered that Mighty Ape have one of their own ranges is called Ape Basics, and it's where they will do a cheap version of something that's normally a very expensive version. So this was about, discounted, it was about $20, I think, or $25 for this little light. It's actually a light. Like I said, I like lights. And I looked, I thought, surely it's hugely different to the other ones that you can get, because I've seen some of them. And yes, the other ones use this fancy ginkgo wood for the cover. And I had a look at the details. So the other ones, this one, like I said, was $20 or $25. The other ones were $90 and $120. And they are the same light level. This is it. And it's actually out of a plywood with a real timber. No, that's a plastic timber laminate, but it's actually plywood. So, and then it's done with grooves through it for the fold, and then craft paper for the pages, and it goes like that. And once it's been charged, they will glow. But also, I realised that because those pages turn together, that I can do a transition that I have had in my head for ages, and I haven't been able to find a video or an animated GIF that would provide it for me, where you get pages that fan from one side across, and then down to the other, and then the book closes. It starts from closed here, the cover opens and the pages go with it, and then the back cover comes with it and closes, and you go from one scene to the other, like when we go from my starting soon to my chatting scene, because none of them actually do it well, but this is going to do it because the pages actually followed through together, and so you can actually have it so you can stand it up as a lamp effectively once it's going properly, and you can also have it so that it goes right around and it's basically the light shines from inside it, but I have to actually charge it up. It's not currently charged, so it's so cool. I like it. Anyway, the thing that blew me away when I was looking up the information is the $90 one is about this big, and the $120 one is about this big, and this was $25. It's like, I think I really want this one. I don't think I need the other ones, and I do like it. It's cool, even if it's not turned on as a lamp. I think it's really cool. But as a reader on a reading stream, and it's rechargeable too, obviously, I think we've got a winner there, definitely. So between my moon and my book, I'm getting all my lights, like all the things I want with lights sort of all sorted out. Actually, if you look at my wish list thing on Throne, you'll see that, yes, I still have other lights. Sorry, this is my water bottle. I've got other lights that I want to. My wish list, I think, is currently lights and post office box, but eventually we'll get there. So whatever, we'll see what happens. Oh, and another thought, Shadow, get hold of me about post office box. We might be able to do something together. So there you go. Those are all the extras for today. There's so many things. Oh, and if somebody does actually buy something when we're on stream, it will actually do a little pop-up over here somewhere. No, down there. So let's get on with the reading. I don't usually have so many extra bits to add, but there you go. At least I'm not umming quite so much today. Here's my book. Pulled it up. No, it's not Dr. Dolittle. I have to actually go through and figure out what chapters I have to put in my information for YouTube when I next load up my next batch of videos for YouTube, because I forgot to write them down on my videos when I was actually doing them here on Twitch. I usually write them down after the session, after the reading session, and I totally forgot. And so now I have to watch through them myself. Cringe when you're watching yourself, and find out what the chapters were in each one. Anyway, so here we go. Let's read A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazil. No, sorry, by Angela Brazil. And we are reading Chapter 4, A Stormy Day. Alack a day, what tears we mingle, for trouble near, I what came single. Not quite my use of English, sorry about that. Though Gorswin was the most quiet little country spot you could find, it lay only 4 miles away from Warford, a rising inland watering place. We use the term watering hole. These days it means a pub, but in actual fact in the old days it usually meant a spa town or somewhere like that, where people would come for health benefits from the local mineral water. Literally, watering place. And we are going to carry on. A rising inland watering place which boasted not only a mayor and corporation, that's the governors who run the town, but a pump room and concert hall, and had a large and fleeting population of visitors, and, to judge by its growing suburbs, an ever-increasing number of residents. So they've just proved by those words that yes, it was a spa town. A pump room. If you go to Bath, you can go and visit the pump rooms, which is the place you used to go to get the mineral water of the town of Bath to take as a therapeutic drink. So it wasn't just for soaking in, which which was what we think of for bath, but it's actually for something to imbibe, because there are minerals in different spring water. Each spring has a different variations on what minerals are in the waters, and they were believed to have healing properties for different disorders. And not unsurprisingly, some of those are actually quite accurate. Not miraculous healing, but when you have a tendency for where you live to have a lack of certain minerals in the soil and therefore in the food that you're eating, which is all produced locally, and then you go somewhere else and you take their waters, if you drink them and they are high in that particular mineral, that will top up those levels in your bodies, and disorders which are caused by a lack of certain minerals can then be corrected. It does make sense. Anyway, but that's why they also had a fleeting population, because they're people coming in to take the waters and then they go home again. Lilian and Peggy attended the Warford High School, and Bobby the grammar school. Sorry, that's right, there are 3 children. And Bobby the grammar school. It was not quite what father would have wished for them, for he had been a rugby boy himself. So rugby in New Zealand is a sport. It's named after the school of rugby, which is where they first played the game, where a soccer ball was picked up and run. So someone carried it to go somewhere, and then that was the initiation of the game of rugby, which is where, yes, you kick a ball with your foot, but you also run with it under your arm. So that's the school that Dad would have rather he went to. Sorry about the explanations, but can't help it sometimes. It was the best he could afford, and certainly the education was excellent, though the pupils were decidedly mixed. Not so good after all. Still, as Aunt Helen said, you have no need to copy the manners of the children you meet. You have been taught at home to behave like gentle people, so please to remember you are Vaughans and keep up the credit of the family. Okay, so got it. Every morning at 8 o'clock, the little governess car and Pixie, the steady black pony, stood ready at the side gate, and the trio jogged off to school with their lesson books. So we would these days call it a governess cart, because a car to us is an automobile. They didn't have them. Ignore that. With their lesson books and their luncheons and their satchels, David could not be spared to go with them, but all the children had been taught to drive, and even Bobby had a firm hand on the reins and knew the rules of the road as well as many a more experienced coachman. Sorry, I'm having trouble with words still. And I think too that Pixie had a sense of her responsibilities and could be trusted not to get the wheel locked with a passing wagon, or to race too furiously down a steep hill, whatever feats her drivers might urge her to perform. The pony and trap were put up for the day at a quiet little inn midway between the 2 schools, and were always waiting for the children by 4:15, when, like the traditional donkey, they joyfully turned their noses toward home again. On one special Monday morning in May, Peggy got out of bed in that peculiar frame of mind which father charitably called highly strung, and Nancy broadly defined as having black dog on your back. To begin with, it was wet. Not that Peggy minded the rain in the least, but if it were fine, Mr. Vaughan had intended to go over to a great cattle fair, which was to be held that day at Shrewsbury, and had promised to bring her home a guinea pig. Like they needed more animals. Yeah. Anyway. We'll see how we go. I'm going to turn on the jigsaw puzzle just in case anyone wants it. And yes, the link should be ready for you to be able to use that in chat. Give it a try, and if it doesn't work, then let me know. And now he won't go, she thought dismally, and I shan't have the chance of another until Warford Agricultural Show in the autumn, because May is late spring. Peggy hated Monday mornings. After the delightful freedom of Saturday and Sunday at home, it was always doubly hard to return to school, and the time until next Friday afternoon seemed an endless prospect. All the nastiest lessons, Peggy thought, came on Mondays. Grammar and arithmetic, dates and French verbs, and all those horrid fussy things which take a great deal of learning without being specially interesting in themselves. In other words, a lot of rote learning. On this particular morning, the children were late for school, for Pixie had cast a shoe upon the road. That means one of her horseshoes had come off. The nails had pulled or something like that. And if you're driving a horse regularly on a metalled or sealed road, they need to have shoes on, because otherwise they wear off their hooves too quickly and then hurt the inside of their hoof instead of just wearing down the nail around the edge, the hoof around the edge. Pixie had cast a shoe upon the road, and Lilian had been obliged to drive so slowly that the church clock was chiming 9:15 as Peggy opened her classroom door. It was rather an ordeal to walk late into a schoolroom full of 30 girls, and the slightly nervous feeling had the unfortunate effect of making Peggy march in with a "don't care" look on her face and shut the door with a bang. Miss Crossland glared at her through her eyeglasses. "If you are so careless as to be late, Margaret Vaughan," she remarked, "the least you can do is to come in quietly without disturbing the class." Rather crestfallen, Peggy threaded her way to her place and took out her arithmetic books. "Which sum are you doing?" she whispered to her desk mate, Emily Thompson, but Emily judiciously pretended not to hear, for she did not wish to waste valuable time in giving Peggy information. She was rather a pretty girl. Her light flaxen hair and pale, fair complexion gave her a smooth, shining appearance. And somehow Peggy always thought her manners were smooth and shining too, for she had a way of wriggling out of any little difficulty and unpleasantness, so that the blame rested upon other people, and was always ready to take mean advantage or play some of those little underhand tricks which schoolgirls know only too well. This is a theme which gets picked up more in Ms. Brazel's other books when they become the schoolgirl style of books. Peggy's frank, downright nature held Emily in much contempt, and as she made no effort to conceal her opinion, the dislike was mutual, and a kind of undeclared war existed between the two. It was unfortunate for Peggy that the third form classroom was furnished with double desks, for as Miss Crossland would permit no changing of places, she was obliged to sit by her enemy for the rest of term, to their equal discomfort and annoyance. Yes, in the old days you were told where you had to sit, which was your desk at school, rather than being able to choose. I remember those days. The lesson dragged on wearily for a while, until they were disturbed by a tap at the door, and a small girl from one of the lower classes entered, full of importance at her errand. "Go for it, Blue. Go for the jigsaw puzzle. Let me know, though, if it doesn't work, and I'll redo the codes." "If you please, Miss Crossland," she piped, "Miss Martin would like to speak to you for a moment in the library." Miss Crossland looked annoyed. She disliked being interrupted in her classes, but the headmistress's request could not be disobeyed. "Very well, Gertrude," she replied coldly, then turning to her class, "Girls, I must leave you for a few minutes. I trust you to continue your arithmetic in silence during my absence. Not a word must be spoken while I am out of the room." For so long, indeed, as her footsteps echoed in the passage, her pupils obeyed her order, but the moment she might reasonably be believed to be out of earshot, a low murmur began among the little heads bent so discreetly over the arithmetic books. No one attempted to do any work. Sweets and apples appeared mysteriously from within desks, and surreptitious bites were offered to appreciative neighbours. One daring spirit even mounted the platform. Across the front of the classroom, there used to be a higher step, and then you would have the blackboard behind that, facing the class, and that's where the teacher would stand, just to make them that little bit extra tall so that they could look across everybody and see what was going on. The platform. One daring spirit even mounted the platform and waved the pointer in supposed imitation of Miss Crossland's majestic style. What made you so late, Peggy? Asked Nora Pemberton in the intervals of ecstatic delight over a white mouse hidden away in a desk mate's lunchbox. Couldn't help it, replied Peggy with her mouth full of chocolate. Pixie lost a shoe and we thought she would go lame, so we almost crawled along. And when we got her in, we had to tell them to be sure and have her shod by 4 o'clock. And of course, it all takes time. I wish I drove to school every day, said Sissy Wilson, a delicate-looking girl who lived in the heart of the town. So she's within walking distance of the school. You wouldn't like it if when it was wet, said Peggy. And if it's frosty, one's hands get just numb holding the reins. Oh, it's jolly enough in summer. We have to start ever so early too, to be here by 9. Well, I only wish I had the chance, grumbled the envious Sissy, but she was interrupted by a warning. Hush, Miss Crossland! In a moment, 30 hair ribbons were bent over 30 desks, and 30 demure young ladies were adding up figures with the utmost care and attention. Miss Crossland looked at them suspiciously. Perhaps 10 years of teaching had caused her to mistrust such amazing diligence. Has any girl spoken during my absence? She inquired sharply. No one replied. Peggy's face flushed, and her conscience gave her a sharp twinge. A Vaughan must never have anything to do with the least little bit of an untruth. So she stood bravely up in her place. I spoke, Miss Crossland, she admitted. And I too, said Nora Pemberton. Nobody else followed Peggy's example. Sissy Wilson bit the end of her pencil in abstruse calculation. Shall we find out what that word is? We'll try, shall we? Let's see if it works. Abstruse, difficult to comprehend or understand. It works! It works! Yay! Clip it, please, somebody. My reaction. I'm just delighted. We actually have something where I can, and you guys can do it too. You can type in exclamation dict, D-I-C-T, and then the space, and then the word that you're defining. Please keep it clean. And it will come up on the screen. And the reason why I put it so it's on the video screen is so that when I'm talking about a word and then we define it, it's visible for the people who are watching over on YouTube, because otherwise they miss out on all the fun. Anyway, carrying on. Abstruse calculation. Emily Thompson was deep in the pages of her arithmetic, while most of the girls were adding up columns as if for dear life. Miss Crossland looked grave. Very well, Margaret and Nora, she said. I must give you each a bad conduct mark, and shall expect you both to stay after 4 o'clock this afternoon. The tears rose in Peggy's eyes at the injustice. What a mean set they are, she said to herself. I'm sure Miss Crossland might have known they had been talking too, but she is always down upon me. She opened her desk and searched for a fresh pencil to hide her telltale face. So by opening her desk, she was hiding her face. And somehow she really did not mean it. Perhaps her tears had blinded her. The desk lid slid from her fingers and fell down with an awful crash which rang through the whole room. Take another bad conduct mark, Margaret Vaughan, said the calm voice of Miss Crossland. You must learn not to show temper when you are reproved. Poor Peggy groaned. Every bad conduct mark meant 6 sums to be worked out when school was over. She and Lilian had been very anxious to get home early that afternoon, for they had meant to sow seeds in the garden. And father was always angry if they kept Bobby waiting, for he did not like him to be loitering about the inn-yard, listening to the talk of the stable boys. So Bobby would be waiting for the horse to go from the yard where he's kept. But Miss Crossland was writing a problem upon the blackboard in compound proportion. Oh, by the way, that dictionary thing only works for words, not phrases. If a hen and a half lay an egg and a half in a day and a half, how many eggs can 4 hens lay in 6 days? What a stupid sum, thought Peggy. How could there be a hen and a half? I don't know the least how to state it. Is the answer to come out in hens or eggs or days? She put down a few random figures, then her thoughts wandered off to the brown speckled hen at home. And she wondered if the little chicks would hatch out today, and whether Nancy would remember to go and see and put the dear fluffy yellow things in a basket before the kitchen fire to keep them warm. Your answer, Margaret? Asked Miss Crossland, but Peggy's mind was so far away in the Abbey barn that she did not at once hear her. Perhaps Emily Thompson really wished to recall Peggy's wandering thoughts, or perhaps there was just a spice of malice in the action. At any rate, she dug the point of her lead pencil so sharply into poor Peggy's hand that her astonished victim sat up with a yell. "Margaret!" exclaimed the outraged mistress. "I couldn't help it," cried Peggy, grown desperate. "Emily hurt me so." "I'm very sorry, Miss Crossland," said Emily sweetly. "I didn't mean to hurt Margaret, only to make her see you were speaking to her." "Which would not have been necessary if she had been attending properly," replied the mistress. "And I must say I think little of any girl who cannot endure a moment's pain in silence. Read out your answer, Emily, and I will then correct the homework." Peggy heaved a sigh of relief at that. She knew the sums which she had worked at home on Saturday were correct, for Lilian had gone over them carefully afterwards, so she opened her book and took up her pencil ready to put a triumphant R next to each of them. We put a check mark, tick. "Miss Martin has borrowed my Blackie's arithmetic," said I'll start that again. "Miss Martin has borrowed my Blackie's arithmetic," said Miss Crossland, "so I have not the answers here, but read out your results, Bertha Muir, and I shall be able to judge from the general average whether they are correct or not." £319 6 and 7 read out Bertha. "Hands up, girls, who have got that answer," said Miss Crossland. At least 20 out of the 30 hands went up like lightning into the air. "Right." "Oh, that's what the R's are for, right," ventured the teacher. Peggy gazed at her sum in amazement. She differed from the answer by several figures. Could both she and Lilian have made a mistake? It seemed impossible, for Lilian was so splendid at arithmetic. But Bertha was reading out the next sum, and the next. To each answer she gave a crowd of uplifted hands. A crowd of uplifted hands agreed with her, and poor Peggy found to her chagrin that in every case her figures were not the same. It could not be that all the 10 sums she had taken so much pains over were wrong. If so, it meant a very bad mark for arithmetic. "Oh, Miss Crossland," she burst out, "it's not fair. I know my answers were right. If you would only work them out on the board, you'd soon see." "Margaret Vaughan," said Miss Crossland sternly, "I am the best judge in this matter, and if I have any more trouble with you this morning, I shall send you straight to Miss Martin. I do not allow any girl to speak to me in that tone." Though inwardly raging, Peggy was forced to put on an outward appearance of submission and good behaviour, and the lessons droned on somehow until the morning was over. Most of the girls fled as usual the moment the class was dismissed, but Peggy stayed behind in the schoolroom to tidy her desk and talk to Nora Pemberton, who just at present was her particular friend among her schoolmates. "I can't think how it was my sums were all wrong," she lamented as she put away the ill-fated home lesson book. Did you get yours right, Nora?" "No, wrong, every one, and I had worked them so carefully." "Just let me look at your answers." "Why, they're exactly like mine. I know they're right. How is it that all the other girls got the same as Bertha?" "Oh, I can tell you that," said Nora. "They all copied her sums, for I saw them doing it just before school began. You know it was the military bazaar at the assembly rooms on Saturday, and I suppose most of the girls were there and had no time to do their homework, so they just scribbled down Bertha's figures before the bell rang." "How unfair and how shamefully mean!" cried Peggy with flaming cheeks. "Miss Crossland ought to work out those sums." She won't, though. You made her so angry about it this morning, and when once she says a thing, she sticks to it. She's always hard on me somehow, sighed Peggy. She's been perfectly horrible today. Why, Nora? What's the matter? For Nora had also had a tidy fit, and had been turning out her desk, and she now drew forth a book with such a very blank and rueful face that Peggy might well exclaim. "It's the literature notes," said Nora in an awestruck voice. "That book Miss Martin lent us to copy from, and that vanished so mysteriously a month ago. Don't you remember what a fearful fuss she made about it? And we were all told to search our desks. I thought I had looked quite to the bottom of mine, but there it was, under a pile of old exercise books. Whatever shall I do? She will be so dreadfully angry with me." "Why, of course you'll have to take it back," said Peggy, "but," her love of mischief getting the upper hand, "I don't see why we shouldn't have a little fun with it first. You won't find Miss Martin in the library now, and it would do quite as well at 4 o'clock. So suppose you put it inside Mary Hill's desk, just to give her a fright. She's such a goose. She'll give a perfect howl of horror when she finds it, and then we'll pretend to think she must have had it there all the time and get her into such a state of mind before we tell her." Dear. Nora laughed, for practical jokes were at a high tide of popularity in the class, and many were the tricks which the girls played on one another. "I owe Mary something," she said, "for she tied my hair ribbon to the back of the desk on Friday, and when I tried to get up I was held fast by my pigtail." "It will be a good way to pay her back then," said Peggy. "See, I'll put it just on the top in front, where she'll find it first thing, but don't tell a soul till this afternoon or you'll spoil all the fun." The two conspirators ran downstairs laughing, and were soon romping in the playground. After dinner, one of the elder girls suggested rounders, and the game grew so enthralling that time flew by until the bell. Oh, there was a picture too, by the way. I'll put it just on the top in front where she'll find it first thing. I'll just find this picture for you. There you go. They're putting it there. Somebody's looking. Oh, no. Who's that? They're putting the book in the desk. Naughty girls. They shouldn't have done that. Someone's going to get them in trouble. We know. Sorry, I just need to paste something here. I try to keep a track of the different ones where I'm having to... No, that wasn't it. If I am actually banning someone, I try to keep a track of who I've banned, but I know that I can actually check that later on. It's in my ban list, so I don't need to do that right now. Do that later. Right. The two conspirators ran downstairs laughing and were soon romping in the playground. After dinner, one of the elder girls suggested rounders, and the game grew so enthralling that time flew by until the bell, ringing for afternoon school, sent the players hot and rosy with their exertions, hurrying up the great staircase to their classrooms. As Peggy passed the door of Miss Martin's study, she happened to notice Mary Hill come out of it with a particularly red and uncomfortable look on her face. "What has she been doing there?" thought Peggy, but there was neither time to inquire Mary's errand nor to carry out her anticipated joke with the notebook, for the girls were taking their places and Miss Crossland came in a moment afterwards. She mounted the platform and rang the bell for order. Ringing the bell. But instead of calling their names as usual, she announced, "Girls, Miss Martin desires that you should all be present in the lecture hall, where she wishes to address the whole school. File out, in order, beginning with the top desk on the right." Full of astonishment, the girls marched down to the large lecture hall, where all the classes were assembling, marshalled by their teachers. It was evidently a matter of some importance, for it was seldom indeed that lessons were interrupted in this manner. The girls kept whispering to each other under their breath, "Whatever can it be all about? Have you heard anything? Why does she want us all there? But their surmises were soon put to an end by the appearance of Miss Martin herself, stately and commanding, as usual, and with a grieved look on her face. She mounted the platform and with a little sigh turned to her expectant audience. "Girls," she began with an air almost of tragedy, "a very distressing incident has happened today, a circumstance which in all the records of the school has never occurred before. You see this book in my hand?" And she held up, oh luckless Peggy, the missing notebook. "This book of manuscript notes, which I had compiled myself from various sources and valued greatly, I lent to be copied by the third form. It was lost, and though I caused every search to be made, I could find no trace of it. Girls, I regret to say that today this book has been brought back to school and has been placed in another girl's desk. In the desk, I repeat, of an innocent girl who had nothing to do with its loss." Miss Martin paused, and a wave of horror passed over the school. As for Peggy, her blood ran cold. It never struck her before that the act of placing the book in Mary's desk could be open to such a construction. She had meant it all for a joke and thought Mary would have been the first to join in the fun, and then Nora would of course have taken it back. She saw now that while they had still been romping at rounders, Mary must have gone up to the schoolroom and finding the missing notes in her desk had carried them at once to the library. "Oh, why did we not come up sooner?" groaned Peggy. "Who would ever have thought of Miss Martin taking it like this? I feel," continued the headmistress sadly, "that we have one girl among us of so dishonourable a nature that she seeks to hide her fault by throwing the blame onto the shoulders of another. Who that girl may be, I cannot tell, but her own conscience must surely convict her." She paused again, and her glance passed slowly round the room. Peggy's face grew burning hot. "I am determined," Miss Martin went on, "to probe this matter to the bottom, and I now call upon any girl who may have any knowledge on the subject to rise up and tell what she knows." Peggy tried to look at Nora, but Nora was several rows behind her. For one moment she hesitated, and in that moment she was lost. Emily Thompson had risen in her place. That's who it was in the picture. "Well, Emily," said Miss Martin gravely, "do you know anything about this unhappy affair?" "I do, Miss Martin," replied Emily in a low voice. "Tell me at once, then," commanded the headmistress. "I would much rather not, please," said Emily, casting down her eyes. "I don't like getting another girl in trouble." Well done on the puzzle, girls. Sorry, people. Well done on the puzzle. Cottage at Shottermill near Hazelmere by Helen Ellingham. There you go. Lovely. I shall get another one ready for you and then we'll carry on with the story, just in case anybody wants to do another puzzle. I've got the thing here somewhere. That one. Put this in here. Get this going. And then we shall carry on. Here you go. Here is the, no, not quite, nearly. There you go. The jigsaw link is now live. And you can carry on with that at your leisure. Oh, did I not get that out of the way for you? Sorry about that. There you go. Now it's ready. Now you can carry on with the jigsaw. The next jigsaw, if you wish. Right. Here we go. I would much rather not, please, said Emily, casting down her eyes. I don't like getting another girl in trouble. Oh, yeah, right. Emily Thompson, this is not the time to shield a companion, and I order you to say at once what you know. Well, said Emily, twisting her slim hands nervously, if I must tell, I went back to the schoolroom before dinner for my pencil box, and, with a sidelong look at Peggy, I noticed Margaret Vaughan putting a book inside Mary Hill's desk. The bolt had fallen. Miss Martin turned to Peggy, who, with white and quivering lips, sat as still as if she had been frozen onto the form. That's like a bench seat. Is this true or false, Margaret Vaughan? She asked in a voice that was scarcely more than a whisper. There were nearly 400 girls in the room, but you could have heard a pin drop. In the silence, Lilian had risen half up in her place and was looking at Peggy with eager, expectant face. As for Peggy, she felt as if the end of the world had come. She could not in truth deny the fact, though of the intention she was absolutely guiltless. She had never in her life told a lie, and she summoned all the Vaughan spirit to her aid. It is true, she faltered, trying to speak bravely, but wishing all the time that she could sink through the floor. Miss Martin gazed at her for a moment as if dumbfounded. That will do, she said at last. I will inquire into this privately. Miss Pope, will you kindly take Margaret Vaughan into the kindergarten classroom, where she will wait until I come to her? Each form may now leave the room in turn. We have wasted time, too much time, already. Peggy's head was in a whirl. She had a confused idea that Lilian was trying to come to her across a row of benches and was being held back by a teacher, but otherwise she scarcely knew what was happening, except that she seemed to be the centre for all the 800 eyes in the room, till Miss Pope took her by the shoulder and marched her away like a warder escorting a very small convict to jail. The kindergarten babies did not return to school in the afternoon, so their little classroom was empty. Left alone, the poor child flung herself onto one of the low seats and burst into a passion of tears. That it should come to this, that she, Peggy Vaughan, who, whatever might be her faults, had always held such an unstained reputation for honour and truthfulness. Sorry, just checking something. Should be deemed capable of such a mean and discreditable action seemed too hard to be borne. She felt as if she could never explain the matter properly, and that the brand of this horrible affair would remain on her for the rest of her life, bringing disgrace upon the whole family. For her sake, she worked herself up nearly to the point of heartbreak when she thought of what Father and Aunt Helen would think about it, and it seemed to her as though the very Crusaders and the lady and gentlemen in the Elizabethan ruffs would look at her from their tombs in the church next Sunday with grave disapproval in their eyes. It's all my own fault, too, she thought, for Nora wanted to take that wretched book back at once, and she would have done so if it hadn't been for me. I don't think Miss Martin will ever believe me now, that when I tell her how it was, and all the girls will think me a mean sneak for evermore. And her tears flowed down faster and faster as she pictured herself a sort of social outcast in the school, shunned and avoided by everyone. I wonder how long they're going to leave me here, she thought dismally, as the afternoon wore away and the clock chimed 3:30. Miss Martin said she was coming after me at once. Oh, if only I could get home, I'd ask Father not to send me to school again. Perhaps Aunt Helen could teach me lessons at home if I begged hard. I can never bear to face anybody here after all this. It really seemed too bad to leave the poor little culprit so long in suspense, for to a child's mind the agony of waiting is often far worse than the dreaded punishment. And childhood's sorrows are so overwhelming and hopeless that they almost eclipse those of later years. Peggy's head was aching, her eyes were red and swollen with crying, and dark despair was settling down upon her when the door suddenly opened and Lilian burst in and caught her in a regular bear hug, while Nora followed like a perfect whirlwind, only a yard behind. "There, darling, don't cry any more. I knew you couldn't do such a mean thing," said Lilian between her kisses. I've been just longing to come and comfort you, but they wouldn't let me. I rushed off at once to tell Miss Martin. I was sure it was all a horrible mistake, but she was engaged with the tiresome caller who had just been shown into the library, and I've been dodging about the corridor all this time waiting to see her. "And so have I," cried Nora. "I've been simply dancing with impatience on the doormat. I know I ought to have told at once, but I was so dreadfully taken aback at it all turning out like that, and you being accused, that I could only stand and stare like an idiot while Miss Pope marched you out of the room. Miss Martin's been ever so nice about it, though. She talked a lot about my being careless and our wanting to play tricks on Mary, but she said she was glad to be able to think as highly of Margaret Vaughan as she had always done, and we were to go at once and set you free. She actually kissed us both before we went, didn't she, Lilian? Do you say you'll forgive me, Peggy, for I feel as if I got you into all this trouble?" "Of course I do," said Peggy warmly, feeling ready to forgive even Emily Thompson in her relief. "The girls all know about it," said Nora. "They're waiting outside in the playground. They think Emily Thompson was a sneak to go telling tales like that without asking you first if you had really done it, and they're so sorry for you that they say they'll give you a hooray when you come out. But though all is well that ends well, Peggy was still so tear-stained and upset that she did not feel equal to facing her schoolfellows, however sympathetic they may be. So she escaped with Lilian through the side door into the street, feeling she would never be really happy or at ease again till she was back in that haven of home, where she was always appreciated and understood, and pouring out her troubles to Aunt Helen in the sanctuary of the Rose Parlour. There you go. Oh my goodness. It worked out in the end. So the head teacher was a little bit more understanding than we expected. Goodness me. It would seem that she actually is a lot more aware of the personalities and natures of the different girls in the school than the girls themselves realise, which is lovely. We had teachers like that, where you expected them to be in a certain way, and then you'd actually get to know them a little bit, and they were a lot different to that. Right, we'll carry on, shall we? Hang on a minute. There was something I was looking for here. Carrying on. Right, here we go. I don't know how far we're going to get through this chapter. We may have to do a condensed version, or stop before the end, or just not interrupt. Okay? Right. A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazil. Right. I did it again. I've got it right every other day. A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazil. And the way they used to write it so people would get it correct if they were doing a pronunciation was Brazzel. Brazil. Or Zzil. Anyway, chapter 5, concerning Lilian. Her life had many a hope and aim, duties enough and little cares. That's your starting poem. This story is so much about Peggy and her satellite, Bobby, that we have rather neglected Lilian, and she deserves a chapter all to herself, for she was one of the sweetest, gentlest, most unselfish of girls who filled a quiet niche in the little world of her home, which would have been sadly empty without her. If anyone had asked Lilian what was her favourite study, she would have promptly have replied, music. She practised away patiently at the old piano, much to the delight of her German teacher, who was wont to hold her up as his pattern pupil. Miss Vaughan, she take pains, very great, he would say to Miss Martin. As for the other young ladies, they have no more music in them than an old hurdy-gurdy. And I'm reading it the way it's written, sorry. I don't think it's specifically German, the accent. All that will please them is a tune to make dance, but for the works of the best composers, they have no heart at all. Lilian's secret ambition was to go to Germany to study at the Leipzig Conservatoire, which Herr Frankenberg always described as the very home and abode of the spirit of music, and made her sadly envious with accounts of the wonderful concerts and operas which might be enjoyed in that favoured city, where the very street vendors would not be tolerated if they cried their wares out of tune. Sorry. Lilian's experience of concerts was confined to an occasional afternoon performance in the Warford Assembly Rooms or the military band in the Spa Gardens, but she bravely hid her longings for better things, for she knew that a musical education would be an utter impossibility in the family circumstances. Music lessons are expensive. Taking them further is even more expensive, because it's considered to be something that's for specifically high-class people, therefore it is priced highly. And these guys, they might have some class to their background, but they don't have the money. And that father had strained a point already to allow her to learn from Herr Frankenberg, who was the most expensive teacher in the school. She had a sweet, true voice, though not of any great volume, and would sing away with much delight when she got the rose parlour all to herself, often composing little things of her own, which were really quite pretty, though she was generally too modest to own to them. One Saturday, towards the end of May, 6 of Lilian's most particular school friends had been invited to spend the afternoon, and there were great preparations at the Abbey. Rollo had been newly washed and combed, the rabbit's hutch had been scrubbed, the arbour swept out, the museum tidied, and Nancy had baked a supply of cakes and tarts calculated to provide for the healthiest appetites. Excuse me. Here they are, cried Bobby, who, perched on the archway that surmounted the gate, could command a view of the distant prospect and report progress like Sister Anne in the story of Bluebeard. All of them? Asked Lilian, hurriedly tying a pink ribbon around the neck of the pet lamb, whose toilette had been forgotten among the many arrangements, getting the lamb all dressed up. Yes, I can see 6 bicycles coming along the road. One girl's got red hair, so I'm sure it's Evelyn Proctor, and the 2 in blue hats will be Susie and Mary. Either sisters or twins, I think. Oh, it is really, for they're turning up from the village over the bridge and waving their hands. And Bobby climbed down quickly from his point of vantage so as not to miss the interesting arrival. They were a very jolly set of schoolgirls whom Aunt Helen came out onto the front steps to welcome. Kathleen O'Reilly was a bright Irish girl with the prettiest suspicion of a brogue imaginable, and that winning manner which seems specially to belong to the children of the Emerald Isle. Susie and Mary Hurst were the daughters of a rising Warford physician, not politician, physician, doctor, and were pleasant and amusing, though they had not the racy humour of Dorothy Gower. Evelyn Proctor was full of high spirits, while shy Lucy Thorburn was perhaps Lilian's favourite among them all, probably because they're both shy. It must be stunning to have a bicycle, said Bobby, regarding with envious eye the row of bright machines neatly stacked against the wall and spinning the pedals. Sorry, I just need to keep an eye out for the next picture. Yep, cool. Spinning the pedals with a not too gentle hand. Yes, it's pretty good fun, said Susie Hurst, good-naturedly giving him a ride around the carriage sweep. The carriage sweep is where you have a driveway comes up to the house and then it loops around and then it goes away again, where the carriages sweep past the front door. There you go. Carriage sweep, where is it? Finding it. Good-naturedly giving him a ride round the carriage sweep. But you see, you have Pixie instead, and I think a pony's really nicer. She can't go so fast, complained Bobby, determined not to be consoled. Perhaps not, but you couldn't bike to school in the pouring rain or snow. It's no joke to get a side slip, I can tell you. Come along, girls, cried Lilian. I have such heaps to show you. It was the first visit that some of the guests had paid to Gorswin, so they were delighted to take a tour of inspection round the garden, farmyard, and ruins. They duly admired the pet lamb, laughed at Jack, stroked the rabbits, declared Rollo to be a black and tan angel, and screamed with horror at Toby, a harmless grass snake, which was the very latest addition to the menagerie. So just remember, the girls live out of town. And one of the things that I discovered when we were living in England was you've got town and then you've got the country, right? So you've got one and then the other. It's like there's this wall in between the two. You don't have town and then the houses get further and further and further apart, and then after a while it's just country by default. Nope, town, country. And so these girls, when they're living in town, they are living in town and getting wildlife from the surrounding countryside when it's around your house. Doesn't happen in town. It only happens when you live in the country. So there you go. It was a bit of an eye-opener for me. It's not the way our towns and villages are in New Zealand. They just sort of like fade out from one to the other. Tea was a lively meal, for Father was full of jokes and funny stories, and Aunt Helen enjoyed schoolgirls' society almost as much as the children themselves, while Nancy's delicacies melted away like snow in summer. Nancy's the cook, remember? "Let us come to the rose parlour," said Lilian, when cups were emptied for the last time, and no thank yous began to be responded to invitations to more cake and pastry. They were saying no thanks, I've had enough. Peggy followed, feeling very grand and grown up among so many elder girls, and shut the door sternly in Bobby's face. "We don't want little boys in here," she said crushingly. "I don't care," shouted the indignant youth through the keyhole. "I don't want to play with a lot of stupid girls, so there, I can go and talk to Joe." The museum proved to be a great fund of interest, for nearly every article had a history, and the guests wandered round the room examining the maps and various specimens of art which adorned the walls. Dorothy was trying the piano, for she played well, though her touch had not half the firmness of Lilian's. "What's this?" asked Mary, hunting through a pile of old music inside the ottoman and fishing out a manuscript page in Lilian's neat hand. "Oh, don't!" cried Lilian, blushing hotly. "Let me have that, Mary, please. I didn't know I'd left it there." "What is it?" exclaimed all the girls, whose curiosity was naturally aroused. "Peggy, you tell." "If you dare, Peg," said Lilian, but for once Peggy turned telltale and disclosed the secret. "It's a coon song she's made up herself," she declared stoutly. "Oh, do sing it," cried Susie. "I couldn't write a note of music if I tried for a year." "Yes, yes, you must," echoed the others. Thus urged, the unwilling composer was hauled to the piano and pressed onto the music stool, where, with many protestations and much bashfulness, she sang the following song. Now, it's racist, okay? Because it's reflecting on the attitudes of the time, but I don't think it would have been a vindictive, nasty racist. It was just the use of the words was not what we would accept now, which is why it was referred to as a coon song, okay? Shoe Pickaninnies. And apparently there's actually a link for it in the book, which I'm not going to bother. "Way down in Georgia, where the sugar am grow, all the pickaninnies want to suck the canes, you know." That's the sugar cane, sucking the juice out of it. We talked about that previously. "And they're hiding round and peeping like the possum all the day, till Uncle Sambo bring his stick and chase them all away." Like I said, racist. But that was what they knew. The kids didn't know what these people were like. Chorus. "Shoo, shoo, pickaninnies mustn't come near. Don't want no little pickaninnies way down here. Old mammy calling you to melon beds among. Shoo, little pickaninnies way go long." Verse 2. "When the kitchen fire am blazing and Aunt Dinah stews and bakes, all the pickaninnies gather just to smell her pies and cakes, and they cluster round her window like the bees upon a comb, till Auntie Dinah she get mad and turn and drive 'em home. Shoo, shoo, pickaninnies," etc. Verse 3. "When master go a-driving in the carry-all and pair, little pickaninnies run behind to shout hurrah and stare. Then the overseer he come up and use his big long lash," that's a whip, "on people. and say the road was never meant to harbour nigger trash, shoo, pickaninnies, etc. So a slaver's song, kind of. Sorry, but that's what was in the book. It's lovely, cried the admiring girls. Did you make up the words too? Of course she did, said Peggy, who was proud of her sister's talents. She's made lots of others too, Lil. Do let me find Dinah's baby and stealing melons neath the moon. No, no, said Lilian. I've shown off quite enough for one day. It's somebody else's turn. Come along now, Dorothy. But Dorothy declared she had played everything she knew, with the exception of scales or five-finger exercises, and none of the others could remember anything without their notes, so the piano was closed and the music put away. There's your little brother outside tapping on the glass, said Susie. What a cherub he looks with his pink cheeks and little tight brown curls. Sure, I'll let him in, the darling, said Kathleen O'Reilly, running to open the French window and admit the smiling Bobby, who entered with an expression of such angelic innocence that Peggy's suspicions were instantly aroused. I thought you might like some chocolates, he said winningly, holding a noble box to Mary Hurst with an air of much generosity. Dear little fellow, how sweet of him, murmured the girls as they collected round with pleased anticipation. Mary opened the box but dropped it with a howl of dismay, for in place of the tempting sweets she had expected lay a writhing mass of fat green caterpillars, newly picked from the gooseberry bushes, a subtle revenge on Bobby's part for his expulsion from the sanctum. You wretch! Cried Lilian, endeavouring to catch and chastise the rejoicing offender, who was off through the window and over the wall long before the girls had finished screaming and shaking their skirts, because the caterpillars had fallen out and gone everywhere. They're obviously not used to being in the garden, these girls. Very much town girls. He's a broth of a boy, laughed Kathleen, who rather enjoyed the joke. Get out the fire shovel, Peggy Mavernine, and we'll be after sweeping them up from the carpet. They're too soft and juicy to be treading underfoot. Yeah, you don't want to squish them in the carpet. What shall we do now? Asked Susie, sinking back luxuriously into the basket chair when the contents of the chocolate box had been successfully removed. Suppose we play at nonsense verse, said Lilian, tearing a few pages from an exercise book and hunting out a supply of pencils. You all know the famous one about the Lady of Riga. There was a young lady of Riga, I think, from the way the rest of this goes. There was a young lady of Riga who smiled as she rode on the tiger. They came home from their ride with the lady inside and the smile on the face of the tiger. Limerick. Well, the game is this. We write down the name of a person we all know on a slip of paper. They are folded up and shuffled, and everybody draws one, and you must write a nonsense rhyme about the person whose name you find upon your particular slip. Then we elect a president and read them out. Sounds dreadfully difficult, sighed Lucy. I'm not at all clever at poetry. Oh, never mind. Do try, said Peggy, dealing out the pencils. It's ever such fun when once you begin. It's one of those things, once your mind gets into the habit of a certain type of rhythm and rhyme, it becomes easier and easier. Sometimes. The names were written out, the papers shuffled and drawn, and for 10 minutes or more the girls sat, knitting their brows and biting their pencils in all the agonies of composition. When everyone had finished, the slips were folded up and placed in a basket, and Lilian, who had been chosen to read the effusions, shut her eyes and drew one out at a venture. The name was Mademoiselle, and the lines ran as follows. There once was a French mademoiselle who thought she knew English quite well. When she meant I am happy, she said I am snappy, which made us all laugh, I can tell. The girls tittered, for Mademoiselle's mistakes in English were a byword all over the school. I wonder who wrote that, said Susie, with an innocent air. Don't give yourself away, my dear, answered Evelyn. We can all guess now. The next paper was headed Mary Hurst. There was a wild schoolgirl named Hurst, who of all the bad pupils was worst, till she started to cram for the Cambridge exam, and to everyone's surprise came out first. I hope that's a true prophecy, laughed Mary, who was studying hard for the senior local. Senior local is a particular exam at that stage in that area. It used to be that different places would have their own examination standards at different levels. This writing is not very clear, said Lilian, unfolding another slip and reading Peggy. There was a young lady named Peg who was terribly strong in the leg. With the boys in a race she could set her own pace, but pray do not name it, I beg. That's your own, Lilian, said the astute Kathleen, for you said the writing was hard to make out, and yet you read it straight off, quite glibly. You may guess as you like, but I shan't tell, replied the president sternly. The fourth paper was described her Frul. There was an old German named Frul, who a respirator wore as a rule. When the weather was bad, oh, his temper was sad, till we wished he were muzzled in school. This proved a favourite, for poor Herr Frul, the German master, was famous for his bronchitis and his bad temper, and the general opinion ascribed the authorship to Dorothy, though she would not acknowledge her laurels. The next, said Lilian, is on Kathleen. There was once a maid named Kathleen, who never a boat race had seen. When they brought her a bow of red, she said, no, my national colour is green. The lines referred to a joke which was never forgotten against Kathleen. When she first came to Warford High School, fresh from her native Erin, she had been taken with the rest of her class to witness a grand boat race between the grammar school and a rival college from Oswestry. Many of the girls had brothers in the contest, and the Warford favours were freely distributed upon the bank. A little boy had come up to Kathleen and politely begged her to accept the scarlet bow of the grammar school and sport it as a token of goodwill toward the heroes of the town, because each of the colours represented the two different rowing teams, obviously. Is it a red riband, then, you'll be after asking me to wear? Inquired the indignant young Irishwoman. It's the shade of the tyrant. Bad cess to it. And don't suit me complexion neither. Sure it's nothing but green favours you'll see on Kathleen O'Reilly. Miss James was the subject of the sixth poem, because she had not understood the purpose of these colours. Miss James was the subject of the sixth poem. A teacher there was called Miss James, the most domineering of dames. When she passed by their places, all the girls made bad faces, but she never found out all the same. Same doesn't quite rhyme with James, remarked Evelyn. Well, I told you I was no good at poetry, began poor Lucy, then stopped in much embarrassment at having betrayed herself. I think it's very nice, said Lilian hurriedly. I like it, one of the best. Don't you want to hear this one about Dorothy Gower? A maiden named Dorothy Gower could never eat anything sour. 2 plain biscuits or bread, no thank you, she said, but candy or cakes she'd devour. It's a slander, cried Dorothy, a vile slander, and if I discover the authorship, I'll bring an action for libel. Go on, Lilian, dear, give us the last. The final effort was on the theme of Joe. There was a young fellow named Joe, who gave him that name I don't know, but I do know that he gave a puppy to me, and that's why I take to him so. That's Peggy's, cried the girls in chorus. It couldn't belong to anyone else. Well done, Peggy. You will have to show that to Joe. He'll be quite flattered. They sat laughing over the rhymes and chattering as only schoolgirls know how, until Aunt Helen came in to announce that a light repast of cake and lemonade awaited them in the dining room, and to gently hint that if Warford were to be reached before darkness had fallen, it was getting time for the 6 bicycles to be set in motion. So there was a grand collecting of hats and gloves and pumping of tyres and many goodbyes and thank yous, and the merry party at last started off on their homeward way, ringing their bells as a parting salute and declaring they would not soon forget their afternoon at the Abbey. And that's the end of the chapter. There you go. The next chapter is going to be Sunday, and we will have that next time. Wonderful, well done on the completing the puzzle, everybody. But I will say that it will not be on Wednesday. Normally I read Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 p.m. New Zealand time. It will not be this Wednesday because I am taking a family member to hospital for a surgical procedure, just an overnight one. You're most welcome, Pangolin. So good you could be here. Wonderful. I hope you've enjoyed it. This is a story by an author we haven't had before. It's a completely new style of thing for our style of story for what we do. Uh, we'll see how it goes. By the way, the author was basically the popularizer of English schoolgirl stories because of the story she went on to write after this one. Anyway, so good everyone could be here. I hope you've all had lots of fun. I've had lots of fun, and I've had lots of things to be able to share with you, like the fact that we now have a definition that shows on the screen up here when someone types a word with dict for dictionary into the chat box and then the word. I've also got set up my gifting system, and I've also showed you my 2 new lights, which I really enjoy. The book light I am going to be now plugging in to charge because I want to see what it looks like when the light's on. So that should look really cool. Don't forget to join me over on Discord. Sorry, just giving you the link for that. And also to go and join the Codex Discord server, or go and find one of the Codex readers to go and follow. Well, a whole bunch of them to go and follow, but see if there's anyone online at the moment that you can go and have a listen to, see what books they're reading, or if they're playing a game, because a lot of them play games as well. Otherwise, we'll see you around, not Wednesday, but the next time I'm reading, hopefully. And in the meantime, happy reading. So bye-bye, everyone. Bye.